Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Normal Islands Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm very excited. It's their first time on the show. Director and founder of Naked Politics, Banseka, Kayembe. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you guys?
I'm really excited. I mean, this is your first time on the show, and I love the work you do at Naked Politics. So I think this is going to be a fantastic show for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it and very happy to be indoors where it's warm and cozy and not outside in that horrible weather.
Well, I tell you what, it's bloody freezing where I'm sat in, but do you know what? The show must go. The show must go on. This this is what we've got coming up on tonight's show. A new poll shows that NEU teachers back the Greens. Layla Cunningham announced as Reform mayoral candidate and is facing backlash. The right are melting down over a Twitter ban, and I'll be interviewing Jamal Awar to discuss the protests in Iran. You can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work or by becoming a YouTube member. But on to our first story. The Green Party have secured a major boost as a recent poll of teachers who are members of the National Education Union overwhelmingly backs them. They are top with 37%, whilst Labour trail on 29%, a huge gain of 25% for the Greens. The poll also shows a seismic problem for the Labour Party. Delta Poll surveyed 3,751 NEU members in England between December the 12th and 15th. The poll found that while 60% of the respondents said they voted Labour in 2024, 18% would do so if a general election were held tomorrow. Unions have been the natural home for the Labour Party, and whilst union leaders have been highly critical of Keir Starmer, most of them party. Now, what makes the NEU poll significant is the fact that so far, unions haven't gotten behind the Green Party, but that could possibly change. Meanwhile, the right-wing politicians and commentators see this new poll as evidence that we're moving towards communism. Aaron Banks tweeted, "Crackpots and communists teaching our children." Adam Brooks also tweeted this. "Imagine being an educated person and thinking that voting for the Greens was a good idea. Open borders, more asylum seekers, legalised heroin and crack cocaine, men in wigs in women's safe spaces, guaranteed economic disaster. Green communism." I mean, words have no meaning anymore, do they? Banseka, do you find this significant, or do you expect unions in the future to endorse the Green Party?
I think it is significant. It's definitely part of a broader shift where we've seen a huge number of different groups and demographics of people move towards the Greens directly away from the Labour Party. You know, young people are another one of those demographics, right? So it's definitely part of a broader movement of the Greens just really eking into Labour's kind of voter base because Labour are not catering to those people. I also think, teachers have been at the sharp end of austerity, I think, over the last sort of 15 years or so. I've spent a lot of time personally in schools with Naked Politics. We have a schools program, so I listen to teachers moaning all the time about how crap everything is. I know they're suffering a lot from cuts. The NEU leader, I think, said a couple of months ago that there were cases of people struggling to manage because of support staff cuts. You had teachers who would stop drinking water during the day because staff toilets were broken. They had nowhere to go to the toilet, which is just kind of obscene working conditions, right? I think in this week as well, there was a story about a school in Stoke-on-Trent where the pupils were left shivering because the PFI contract ended without the necessary school repairs having been done. So teachers are very much, I think workers who've really felt the sharp end of austerity over the last 15 years, and I'm not surprised that they're abandoning the Labour Party. Whether or not the unions institutionally break away from the party, I think, is a different matter to individual members liking the Green Party and voting and supporting for it. I think it would be a phenomenally historic thing, to be honest, to see unions en masse sort of reject the Labour Party, and there'll be some pretty dire financial consequences, I think, for the Labour Party if that happens, despite, I think, people like Morgan McSweeney's best efforts to inject much more private finance into the party. I'm pretty sure the party is still actually really quite reliant on union funding and union donations, right? I think one thing that's interesting that happened at the end of last year in relation to this was we had the election of Andrea Egan for example, who was elected as General Secretary of Unison, and she kicked off with a bang, pretty much telling the Labour Party, get your act together, become a proper workers' party, or we might leave. And I was stupid enough to make a bunch of political predictions for 2026, and off the back of that, I do think we may start to see an erosion of union support for Labour, so that this may be another telltale sign that bedrock of support for Labour is really starting to crumble. A lot of this hinges, I think, on how Labour move forwards, especially assuming Keir Starmer has gone after the local elections. He's got a bit of a Damocles sword hanging over him at the moment, right? Where, he must know at some point he's probably going to go. Once they get past that, can they promise the unions enough to make them stay? Can they go bolder than what they've currently gone on at the moment? All they've offered workers for the most part is, some stuff around the employment rights bill, which is better than nothing for sure. Like, I'm grateful for some of the stuff that was in there, don't get me wrong, but it's not bold enough. It's not really changing the landscape in terms of wages and working conditions for many different workers across the economy. Is the Labour Party really prepared to have Blue Labour sort of loosen its grip on policy and actually offer something proper for people to keep the unions on board? So I think this is maybe like a tiny little microcosm of that kind of end game. It's crazy to say that because this is a party that's been in government less than 2 years, but it's a kind of end game sort of mark, I think, where the Labour Party does need to start making some serious decisions about whether or not it's actually prepared to work properly with unions and reflect what unions want. Otherwise, they're going to have some serious financial problems as well as serious electoral problems.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned Andrea Egan, obviously the newly elected General Secretary of Unison. And she's been the one who seems to be serious about potentially cutting ties with the Labour Party. I mean, we've heard Sharon Graham from Unite say it, but I think it's all talk. There's no action there. Whereas Egan has spoken about potentially aligning with your party, but I do think maybe the Greens should be in there in terms of union backing. What I do find funny from a lot of the right wings who are calling this communism is they're not understanding the sort of material conditions in which teachers find themselves and in why they're sort of breaking apart from the Labour Party. But I mean, what do you make of the right wing thinking that our education system just pushes communism?
Yeah, I mean, it's just insane. It's like proper insane in the brain politics. I mean, I think they know it's nonsense as well. That's the thing. Like, they're doing an act. It kind of reminds me of, like, if you've seen, I think it's the head teacher, Britain's strictest headmistress, like Catherine Bilbao Singh, who does this kind of weird, like, Roald Dahl villain character act where she pretends to be really strict and she just comes on TV and talks about how the schools are infiltrated with Marxism and communism. It's total nonsense, and I think they know that. Do I think most teachers personally skew liberal or left? Yeah, probably. That's just the way it is. In the same way, if I go into the banking sector, most people are going to be right wing. God, I'm not going to walk into the banking sector and be like, God, where are all the socialists? So I do think that's true. And like you said, ultimately, it's the fault of some of those people who are moaning about teachers and calling them Marxists. It's their politics' fault. You probably radicalized some of these people who maybe otherwise would have been more centrists or like right-wing people. You probably radicalized them into becoming more left-wing because, the situation in a lot of schools is seriously dire. And I just will say this, there's nothing wrong with teaching communism in schools. Like, if you look at the citizenship curriculum, which is something that every school is supposed to teach children, we're meant to talk about a wide variety of political ideologies. There's nothing wrong with talking about communism. I've done that in schools as well as talking about other, types of political ideologies. We're meant to teach kids to think critically, like, not to teach them what to think, but how to think. So there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But the implication, I guess, with them is that these kids are receiving a biased education, which is, biasing them towards communism. In my experience as a facilitator who goes into schools quite a lot, I think teachers are actually super cautious about what they teach kids about politics, and they're really scared of like effing up and not being impartial and not delivering a kind of wide variety of different ideologies in schools. So I find that completely counter to my experiences. I think that's something teachers actually take really seriously. I think the other thing I will say is this, which is probably the most important thing, which is that there is a long history as well, I think, of the right, the radical right, the far right, being highly suspicious of educators. And I think educators, teachers, like, they're a particular type of working person that I think really gets under the skin of some of these right-wing people, because I think they are a threat. people with knowledge and education, and they have power, right, in a political sort of landscape where you're really trying to narrow the scope. You're trying to narrow the scope of what people see and what people understand and control information. And teachers are kind of an anathema to that, right? They're a bit of a threat to that. Think about McCarthyism in the 1950s. Some of the people who got some of the harshest treatments were teachers. Teachers who were accused of teaching communism at school, of pushing un-American agendas through schools, for example. And I think this move, which they know is an exaggeration, but I think this move to frame teachers as sort of crackpot manipulators of children, it's quite a visceral image really to give people. That means that other political demands that they may have, like fair pay, better working conditions, having smaller class sizes so children can learn better and more, have a higher quality of education, they can then dismiss all of that stuff as well, because you've already characterized these people as crackpots and left-wing weirdos.
I agree with all of that. It's a very good point. I would love to continue discussing this, but it's already 7:45. We've got 3 other stories to get through, so we are going to move on. Let's go on to our second story of the evening. Layla Cunningham, the Westminster Reform Party councillor, has been selected as their candidate for London Mayor. The councillor, who defected from the Conservatives last year, took aim at Labour Mayor of London Sir Sadiq Khan and said she had a different message for Londoners. There will be a new sheriff in town, and I'll be launching an all-out war on crime, she said. Yet many on the right and Reform's base outright reject her candidacy. Dan Wootton had a meltdown, and he tweeted this. How is the mainstream right not getting this? Reform UK have capitulated to Islamists, picking the Muslim Layla Cunningham to battle Sadiq Khan to become Mayor of London is deeply depressing. Nigel Farage rejected going with a true patriot in Ant Middleton, who has my support. Wootton referring to Ant Middleton, the TV personality turned far-right activist. Cunningham may be finding out that despite being on the right, her being a Muslim means she will be rejected by a cohort of hardcore Reform supporters. Right-wing journalist James Isis said, my concern with Layla Cunningham is that she's been out marching at Pride as an elected representative, and just yesterday listed trans people as a cohort she wants to be there for. I hope that being there for doesn't extend to puberty blockers and men in women's spaces. Attached to his tweet was a screenshot of a post from Layla, made from 2022 attending Pride, and this video.
Whether you're Muslim, Hindu, Catholic, gay, trans, we need a mayor that is there for everyone equally, not some select groups.
Catherine Blake-Locke, founder of the Brexit Party, said, I would never vote for her. She is not English and she is a Muslim. I mean, the irony here is that Blake-Locke is from a multi-ethnic family. Blake-Locke's first husband was a Nepali called Gayen Sherpa, who she met in 1997 at Everest Base Camp, with whom she has 2 children. Her second husband is a British Jamaican, Christopher Kirkpatrick. I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you? Another thing that may upset Reform supporters is a post from an old account of Layla's. Here's Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, Layla Cunningham's old Twitter account. Her response to the Westminster Bridge attack shows her true feelings of London, one that celebrates diversity. She was even moved to copying, you guessed it, Sadiq Khan in an attempt to bring it to his attention. And this was the tweet she shared. So as you can see on screen, I think we've got graphic 12. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, the text is quite small, but basically she's listed a lots of people from different communities. And it's a very pro-diverse message, which may not go down well with right-wingers. But worrying about people on the right isn't the only trouble she will be facing. Cunningham appears to have broken company's law.
Last night, the Times newspaper revealed you yourself have had multiple businesses struck off after breaking...
I'm sorry, can I just stop you there? Are you insinuating that's a crime?
I haven't said that. I'm simply saying that you've had multiple businesses struck off after breaking company's law. Is there an irony there that you're talking about a major problem with breaking the law when actually you've been part of businesses struck off after breaking company's law?
So I didn't break company's law. Like many entrepreneurs, I don't really like the insinuation that it was a crime in any way.
I haven't. There's no suggestion that that is the case.
Well, you are linking it to my discussion about law and order. But like many entrepreneurs, I've set up small companies over the years.
Did you fail to file? Did you fail to file accounts, because that is a criminal offence?
I tried out different business ideas. Some became inactive, and that happens to thousands. They were all dormant, by the way. Every year, there was never any wrongdoing. No one was defrauded, and I passed all CPS vetting after that.
Did you fail to file company accounts, because that is breaching the law?
Yeah, because they were dormant and admin lapsed.
But that's a breach of the law, is it not?
I mean, to be fair, he did sort of suggest that, but he's not wrong. It is actually against the law. But the excuse there was that, well, you know, her companies were dormant, but you still have to file accounts of such companies. Banseka, what do you make of Layla and the backlash from the right because she's a Muslim?
Yeah, it's so hard to feel sorry for her, knowing that, you know, she said so many horrendous racist things about so many other groups of people, unfortunately. But I mean, it's an interesting one, I think, for Reform, right? Because Reform do this quite delicate sort of tightrope walk in terms of how they engage with more sort of radical right-wing ideas to the right of them, versus an attempt, of course, to be seen as a viable mainstream party, because at the end of the day, they're in the business of winning as many votes as they can and of getting majorities. Like, that's what we're talking about now with Reform. So on the one hand, you have the likes of Nigel Farage and co, who are very strategic, because they'll be very hesitant to ever critique the likes of, you know, Tommy Robinson, people who are more extreme than them, more sort of like more of a kind of ethnic nationalist, or more openly ethnic nationalist than they are, because they recognise that the political presence of those more right-wing people moves you over to the window. Right, moves you over to the window to the right, which helps them significantly. It helps Reform seem more moderate and more sensible, even though ultimately they've got, I would say, fairly extreme views as well. You know, scrapping indefinitely to remain was a very extreme policy idea, I think. But having those people on the right of you and courting some of those people on the right of you, in a sense, is very helpful, because it changes the political perspective. It changes the political sort of landscape that we're in, right? So you'll never really hear the likes of Farage sort of vociferously condemning, you know, radical right-wing views, because they know it's good for their own prospects, right? On the other hand, Reform are trying to become a major political party, gain a majority of seats in the next election. They want to, you know, they're governing whole county councils in some place. I'm in Kent at the moment, by the way. I live in Dartford, so I live under a Reform council, right? A county council. So, you know, they're kind of balancing these two things, and they're playing sometimes a little bit of a delicate game with how they do that, right? So they want to be able to show, I think, a certain level of diversity. Zaya Youssef, Layla Cunningham, you know, having some women involved as well, a bit of a gender balance, etc. So they want to be able to show and demonstrate that. I think they also understand there's a utility in that, which is a very, you know, well-worn playbook by now. We've seen lots of different parties wheel out all kinds of different people with different identities to do some horrendous policy making. I also do think, actually, as well, that Reform do want to court maybe like ethnic minority voters as well. I do think there's a certain cohort, perhaps more middle-class ethnic minority voters, who would be quite interested in voting for a more conservative economic political project, and maybe the racism sometimes has sort of put them off, right? So they're balancing out these things, and it's sometimes those things come to a head or come at loggerheads, which is essentially what we've seen. We've seen people with very kind of ethnic nationalist ideas who find this idea that Layla Cunningham, who's got a Muslim background, she's got Egyptian heritage, and that doesn't fit their very sort of purist ideas about what Reform should be doing, or what a kind of viable right-wing party should be doing. So it's kind of hard sometimes for Reform, I suppose, to straddle both, and it's probably been a bit awkward for her personally to have all of that in her mentions over the last couple of days, all this backlash from kind of quote-unquote their own base of people. I don't think it's going to be like a massive problem for them, you know. I don't think that those people necessarily represent the wider breadth of the voter coalition base that Reform is trying to build. I do think they are still a minority within that. Not to sound overly optimistic about the state of race in this country, but I don't think people are that crackpot, like eugenicist, like, you know, just yet, as some of these people are. I do think it's interesting she's been outed as a bit of a grifter. I didn't know that, and it was quite funny to see some of these old tweets of her doing a bit more sort of, you know, liberal, you know, equality type political stuff several years ago. So I don't know if that may actually harm her a bit more, that she seems like someone who's been very opportunistic. But I don't know how much really that, having a Muslim candidate, for example, in London is really going to harm her. And as I said, like, having an ethnic minority do racist policies is a super well-worn playbook, with lots of success, unfortunately. I do also think she's shown herself, by and large, to actually be a relatively competent communicator. I think there's a reason why we've seen her a lot more, for example, someone who's not actually holding an elected... Oh, wait, I can't remember what her elected position is at the moment, but there's a reason why we've seen her, for example, a lot more than like someone like Sarah Pochen, who's an MP. We never see her, probably because Reform knows she's not very good and she's not a great communicator and she can't get people on board in the way that Layla can. So yeah, ultimately, I don't think there's enough of their base that is so kind of like ethnically purist, particularly when we're thinking about a London candidate as well, which is a multicultural city, we should say. I mean, Reform tell us that all the time, but they mean it in a bad way. It's a multiracial, multicultural city, so it's also perhaps a good thing to be able to demonstrate that and show that, at least in the candidate that you have, even if the candidate's just going to sit there and tell voters in London that everything about their city is terrible. Personally, I'd be a lot more worried about the fact as a voter that her husband works for Palantir, but yeah, I don't know how much this will really harm their chances in London or harm the party overall, but it's something that the party's going to have to keep managing, and maybe at some point in the larger future, it may actually cause bigger problems for them.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't think the loud voices who are attacking her based on her being a Muslim is a wider issue in terms of the coalition Reform want to get. So in terms of votes, I don't think that's an issue. I think the bigger deal for her is her links to not just Palantir, but Zionism. There's many pictures of her with the Israeli flag behind her, especially in a city like London, a very multicultural city, a very progressive city. To try and win on a ticket when you're not just pro-Palestine, but seemingly a Zionist, I think that's going to be a far bigger deal. In terms of her media appearances, I mean, yeah, she's a councillor, and I always ask the question, why is she platformed all the time? But someone like Sarah Pochen, who's an MP, we know the skill difference in communication. Sarah Pochen is god-awful. It's very good, though. We are going to park that there, because got another 2 stories to get through. But before we move on, it's 2026, and we want this year to be big for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put us on the map. So we would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio finally, where we can all be in a studio rather than just different houses, and for our contributors to be paid for the work we do. I mean, so far your support has been amazing over the years, but we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations. So if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. Next story. The right wing are having a meltdown over talks. Okay, not concrete policy, but just talks of the UK banning Twitter after Grok have been generating child sexual abuse material. Now, to be clear, the government isn't actually planning on banning Twitter. They're just looking at options to deal with the exploitation material that has been spreading across the social media website. The Prime Minister said Ofcom, which has the power to effectively ban X in the UK, has the government's full backing on the matter. He told Greatest Hits Radio, "It's unlawful. We're not going to tolerate it. I've asked for all options to be on the table. It's disgusting. X need to get their act together and get this material down. We will take action on this because it's simply not tolerable." Musk's response to this has been disgraceful. Instead of making sure there is no exploitation content with zero tolerance, he simply puts it behind a paywall. So this is a screenshot after someone had asked, basically, can you make a very disgusting image? And Grok's response is, image generation and editing are currently limited to paying subscribers. You can click on the link to subscribe to those features. So they're not banning it outright, they're just putting it behind a paywall. Now, Twitter being banned isn't the big story here, but the backlash we've seen mainly from the right wing. Alex Phillips said this on Talk TV.
This government chills me to the bone. They're pushing forward now with the digital ID thing. They'll find some sort of excuse to make sure they can ram raid us with their disturbing dystopian communist ideology. But something that really did send a shiver down my spine was Sir Keir Starmer's message to X. OK, so we found out that Grok had been used by some people to do some really deeply disturbing, disgusting things. As a woman who campaigns a lot about women's safety and cares a lot about the hypersexualisation and pornification of society, then yes, Grok, get your act together. AI deepfakes are not funny. But Grok's going to, well, look into that, one hopes. AI image editing is going to be limited to paid users only. Well, I think you probably need to go a bit further than that. But what Sir Keir Starmer said about using one of his quangos, Ofcom, using the full forces of all their powers against X, including possibly closing it down. I'm sorry, you can't gaslight me, son. You ain't pulling the wool over my eyes. This has got nothing to do with the AI deepfakes, does it? You don't like X because it is a leading source of news in this country. You don't like X because you don't like free speech. You don't like X because you don't like people being able to exchange informations and opinions and ideas. You don't like the criticism, do you? You're a thin-skinned megalomaniacal monster. That's why you want to close it down. If you really cared about sexual abuses online, there's a myriad porn sites you could have closed down. Didn't do that, did you? I mean, come on. People traffickers advertise their wares on TikTok. You're not threatening to close that down. All sorts of weird things are being sold illicitly on Instagram. You're not closing that down. There are paedophiles out there using platforms such as Snapchat to groom kids. You're not closing that down. And yet, the social media platform that is actually about news and information, and yes, a place, the public forum, where people can get together and, frankly, criticise you, that's the one you're going after? Yeah, you ain't fooled me, son. We see you. We know what you're doing.
Oh, classic. We see you. We know what you're doing. What did we just watch? She's crazy. She's crazy. Okay, I want to address some things she said there. I mean, first of all, look, everybody knows I'm not Keir Starmer's biggest cheerleader. Everyone knows, this channel does not like the Labour Party, right? But come on, let's get the facts straight. First of all, Keir Starmer's not said he's going to ban Twitter. Okay, so try making comparisons with other social media websites. Say, well, he's not banning porn websites. He's not banning this. He's not banning that. Yeah, he's not banning Twitter either. All right, he's simply backing Ofcom because Ofcom is fine because they're a pretty weak organisation, by the way. They don't do anything. Done nothing to GB News, right? Are saying Elon Musk has a AI tool called Grok, which is pushing out child exploitation content, and he's doing nothing about it. And yet we've got these people on the right wing, Alex Phillips and others, who are so concerned about women and girls, are defending a billionaire-owned platform, Elon Musk, who was putting out child exploitation content, who was friends with Donald Trump, who's also a paedophile. These guys don't believe in anything. They're so inconsistent. And I think it's funny as well, the way this is being framed is, well, news and X is a source for news and information. It quite literally isn't, okay? It's owned by a sole billionaire, right? That's not freedom of information. That's not democracy. That is an opinion of one man. And it's well documented that Twitter has been manipulated in terms of the algorithm to serve the interests of Elon Musk's of the world, the oligarchs of the world. In fact, Elon Musk and his shift to the far right, fascist and quite literally Nazi politics, he's been pushing that out. He's been censoring real news and information whilst allowing Holocaust deniers back on the platform. People who are calling for, well, ethnic cleansing, who are calling for remigration, which is a white supremacist policy, that's all fine. And then he's also censoring the word cis. So the idea this is a free and open platform is ridiculous. But because Alex Phillips, Talk TV, and all the right-wingers, they all suck up to the billionaire class and the oligarchs, of course they want to defend Twitter. And by the way, right, if Keir Starmer does ban Twitter, it'd be the only good thing he ever did. Rupert Lowe, of course, didn't like this. He also tweeted, "Talk of X being banned in Britain by Starmer. I will fight it in Parliament." Tommy Robinson quote tweeted him and said, "We will fight it on the streets." And I find it funny how people like Lowe and Robinson, who are so concerned again about the safety of women and girls, are defending a website that is literally promoting child exploitation content. Now, why do right-wing figures such as Lowe love Twitter so much? Could it be this? Reform MP Rupert Lowe earns nearly £1,000 an hour for tweeting. Since July, he has made £12,460 from the app, but that's also old data from last year. Updated figures shows he earns much, much more. Grok estimates Rupert Lowe made between 65,000 and 85,000 from posting on X in 2025. Every time you see a blue tick ranting about banning an X that enables sex offenders, people calling for the UK to be invaded, a state-sponsored attack on us, ask Grok to estimate their X earnings. Why do you think he baits so much? I mean, I doubt he believes half the things he says, but he makes a lot of money through engagement farming. But whatever your views on whether Twitter should be banned or not, that is the matter for our government to decide, not any other country. Yet, hot off their imperialism streak, Representative Anna Paulina Luna has threatened sanctions against the UK and Keir Starmer. If Starmer is successful in banning X in Britain, I will move forward with legislation that is currently being drafted to sanction not only Starmer, but Britain as a whole. This would mirror actions previously taken by the United States in response to foreign governments restricting the platform, including the dispute with Brazil in 2024 to 25, which resulted in tariffs, visa revocations, and sanctions and consequences tied to free speech concerns against Brazilian officials over concerns related to censorship and free speech violations. Starmer should reconsider this course of action, or there will be consequences. There are always technical bugs during the early phases of new technology, especially AI, and those issues are typically addressed quickly. X treats these matters seriously and acts promptly. Let's be clear, this is not about technical compliance. This is a political war against Elon Musk and free speech. Nothing more. If Starmer... Oh, sorry, I missed the end there. Anyway, it's pure projection. Yeah, we can get rid of the graphic. It's pure projection, right? Because they are defending Elon Musk because they like his politics. Elon Musk is going around and funding elections back in the Republican Party. The Republican Party are a pro-capital party, a pro-billionaire party. So they support Elon Musk for those reasons. Trust me, I mean, remember when Jack Dorsey owned Twitter? Hardly a lefty, by the way. And they used to call Twitter a left-wing platform. They used to rail against Jack Dorsey. You know, for them, it's like, oh, we like that billionaire. For us leftists, we don't like billionaires at all. It's ridiculous. Now, if Starmer wants to ban Twitter, that is the decision of the government, not the decision for bloodthirsty imperialist ghouls of the US to decide. I don't think we should be bullied by a nation, especially led by a pedo. Banseka, do you think we should ban Twitter?
Wow, what a segue. I can't, I hate that I have to say this, but justice for Keir Starmer, I guess, first of all. Like, wow. That's something, putting me on the side of Keir Starmer. But I completely agree with, most of what you've said. And this country has every right to assert its own laws and its own in its own jurisdiction, right? I mean, just before I talk about the ban on Twitter, I just wanted to talk really quickly about the Rupert Lowe stuff as well. I mean, I was having a peek, because I'm a sado, I was having a peek at the register of interests yesterday online of Rupert Lowe to try and get a grip on how much money this man must be earning from X. And it's just absolutely astonishing, actually, to think that there is an elected MP who is elected by his constituents to represent his constituents in Parliament. And presumably he's spending a significant portion, it seems, because the guy's constantly on my timeline, he's spending a significant portion of that time tweeting sensationalist, racist, awful things as a way of engagement farming so that he can line his own pockets and earn thousands from a social media platform. Like, that's where our democracy is now. We have a totally topsy-turvy skewed democracy where he may be getting as much as, if not more money soon from tweeting out insane in the brain things than representing his constituents. That's where we're at. I mean, I think it's a joke, by the way, that this can all just be written down in the Register of Interests. Okay, and then what? It's just written down in this big book called All My Massive Conflicts of Interest, and then nothing happens. It's a huge conflict of interest, I think, massively, for him to be able to spend so much time and accrue so much money from something which potentially is harming his constituents and people in this country. So I think I just think that's really outrageous, to be quite honest with you. In terms of banning Twitter, that I spend an awful lot of time on that website. I've got a horrible addictive relationship to it. I'm chronically addicted to Twitter. I'm not one of those people that left when Elon Musk took over. But, you know, I have to say that there are lots of good reasons to ban it. You know, maybe that this Grok incident is just one of them in some ways, as you've said. The enabling of AI tools to kind of digitally harass other users by removing clothing from people is really scary. The thought that this could extend to children as well, and sexualized images of children, is also really terrible, and just, I would have thought, irrefutably immoral. You know, one of those things where we just all sort of look at that and go, oh my God, that's terrible. And I think ultimately, if Elon Musk can't ensure that his platform adheres to those basic safety rights for the citizens of this country, then I think we have every right to say, well, we're not going to have this here then, because we need to protect our people and the people who live here. You know, Britain first, if you like. So, you know, and I do believe it's also currently illegal as well to share like deep fakes of adults and stuff as well. So I think it's probably a good case to say it's already in breach of the laws that we already have, and that we should be able to enforce, you know, by our own legal system and our own elected officials, right? I think just to take a step back and just look at the wider picture here, there's a lot happening at the moment, which I think is seriously underscoring how little sovereignty we actually have in this country. Increasingly, the way that, you know, me, you, anybody watching this, anybody who lives here, any other citizen in this country votes, has little to no bearing, other than pure coincidence maybe, about what this country actually does. Our foreign policy for a long time has been outsourced to Washington. How you vote has no bearing on what our foreign policy is, because we'll do what our imperial US masters tell us to do. Much of our economy is increasingly being parasitically taken over by the West. You've got big tech have really got their teeth into us now, and now we can't even protect our own citizens from, you know, deeply damaging actions and without having economic threats leveled at us by a foreign empire. You know, and they're not doing any PR around it. They're not sort of adding any fluff around it and then saying the really mean stuff behind closed doors. They're literally just tweeting, do what we say, holding a gun to our head and saying, do what we say or we will do this and it will be bad for you guys. So there's a kind of real mask off, you know, no bones about it kind of way in which we are being told by an empire, this is how things are going to go, and you're going to like it or lump it. And so there's so many alarm bells, I think, ringing. It's only the start of the year, and yet we've had so many alarm bells already ringing, giving us a kind of massive wake-up call that if we carry on this trajectory of kowtowing to the US, we are going to find ourselves less and less free. You know, this country 10 years ago now, with the Brexit referendum, had a big conversation about sovereignty. And there's lots of really good conversations to have, whether you voted Leave, Remain, whatever, about the sovereignty of this country. And this is a kind of key apex question to ask ourselves, actually, about, do we want to be a sovereign country that decides for itself what we do, whether you voted Remain, Leave, whether you voted in the last election Tory, Reform, Labour Party, Green Party, whatever. Who is voting in this country for us to have less autonomy, for us to have less of a decision-making power in this country? You know, who voted for this world order that we're living in? And I think that's a serious question for us to have to grapple with as we look forward over the next sort of years and decades, about how we untie ourselves from this empire, which really does not have our best interests at heart. The special relationship, tear that up and throw that stuff in the bin, to be honest, because it's just not relevant anymore, I think, to the world that we are living in, the fundamental paradigm shift that there has been towards just a complete subjugation, I think, really of our country on the world stage. And if we want to have freedom and have autonomy and decision-making power, we need to do something about it.
I mean, I'm the same as you. I'm always on Twitter, unhealthily so, right? We're actually broadcasting to Twitter right now, but guess what? I still say ban it. And the reason why I say that is it's not even just about the fact that the content has gotten really bad, not to mention the child exploitation content, but like the algorithm being manipulated to push right-wing content. That's not even, for me, the main thrust of why I want it banned. The reason why is because we cannot have a single person have so much power over the means of communication. And that is why I don't believe we should ban Twitter in isolation. We need to look at the entire media. So when you've got Alex Phillips from Talk TV saying, oh, you radical lefty, you want to ban Twitter? First of all, yes, I'm a radical lefty. But also, I want to do something about Talk TV. I want to do something about GB News. I want to do something like The Guardian, The Mirror, The Telegraph, all of the corporate media. Because at the moment, we have generally the majority of the means of communication owned by a handful of billionaires. That's not democratic. And the idea that, well, just because Twitter isn't the government, therefore it's free speech, it's not the case, because you've got, again, one guy who was a very unhinged individual, by the way, literally changes the algorithm to make himself happy and enriches his mates and upholds a system of oligarchy. So it's in the interest of democracy to not only ban Twitter, but have a full-on media revolution, which is why we have independent media, of course, to plug us. I also thought that what you're saying about patriotism is so true. We don't have a real nationalist movement in this country, or maybe even globally, right? I'm an internationalist, right? But God forbid I get to debate an actual nationalist. You've got the big figures like Tommy Robinson. They're just bitches for US oligarchs in Israel. I mean, they're not even proper nationalists. And you've got people who want to bring back feudalism. They want Trump to be their king. They're saying stuff like, hey, what you did to Venezuela, do it over here, please. Oh, let's have an imperial invasion over here. Where's your sense of patriotism? These people would rather Keir Starmer be kicked out in a regime change from Donald Trump than in a democratic election. I think it's wild. I mean, I didn't vote for Starmer. I'll never vote for the Labour Party. But my God, I will defend our own government against a foreign billionaire paedophile. It's wild. Very good comments there, but we are going to park it there, and we're going to get on to our final story. Over the last couple of days, a new wave of protests have erupted across Iran over the current supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. On the 28th of December, protests began in Tehran after the Iranian rial dropped to 1.42 million to the US dollar. This has led to hyperinflation, with the price of foods and other necessities increasing. Now, it's worth pointing out that they have faced sanctions from the US, Europe, and the UN over the years, leading to the worsening of the cost of living. In the last couple of days in December, protests had spread to other cities, with the police using tear gas in response. On January the 1st, the first fatalities were reported, with authorities saying that at least 7 people had been killed. The most intense violence appeared to be in Azna, a city in Iran's Lorestan province, where videos posted online seem to show objects in the street ablaze and gunfire. In total, violence around the demonstrations has killed at least 50 people, while more than 2,270 others have been detained, according to US-based human rights activists news agency. The country has also faced an internet blackout over the last couple of days. Khamenei has accused protesters of being in cahoots with Donald Trump. This is Trump's warning to Khamenei.
I've told them that if they do anything bad to these people, we're going to hit them very hard.
So if there is mass murder by the Iranian Ayatollahs and those leadership, you're pledging to the people of Iran that you will come to their aid.
I've said it very loud and very clear. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
So if the Iranian government harms any protester, he's going to invade them. I mean, that's kind of ironic to say when 2 days ago, right, ICE executed a woman in cold blood. I mean, is anyone going to invade the US? Now, earlier today, I caught up with writer and the editor of The Canary, Jamal Awar. Jamal, can you tell us what's been happening over the last couple of days in Iran?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Curtis, for having me first. So, really what's happening in Iran is over the past couple of days, we've seen a renewed cycle of unrest, of mass protests, centered obviously in urban areas, amplified heavily by Western media. And I feel the best way to describe this is that there are a mix of grievances in Iran. It's like a collage or a bouquet of grievances, because it is true that obviously you have crippling sanctions on Iran that have lasted for a long time. You have economic pressure from outside, but you have your inflation in Iran, and you have youth unemployment in Iran, and you have social restrictions in Iran, and I think it's kind of like both things can live at the same time. And they live in a very aggressive under a very aggressive external narrative that frames it obviously as a regime against the people, and I think it's a bit more complex than that. And so yeah, talking about these two things that live in one place. First of all, there is obviously genuine anger inside Iran, particularly among the youth, the younger generation who have grown up under these crippling sanctions. They feel isolated. They feel impoverished more and more by the year. I think it's very noteworthy here to point out that a lot of the protests came out of the Grand Bazaar in Iran, which has obviously merchants, people who are involved in trade and in your daily businesses. So these are people who have felt the economical mismanagement in Iran, and that these are people who know that things can be better, and these are people who want things to change. But usually these people have been more pro the government. I think businessmen are usually pro every government, really, because all they want is kind of stability. They want their currency not to be devaluated all the time. They want the prices not to change. This is the most important thing. So this is true on one hand, and this mismanagement happened obviously because of countless reasons, many of them super avoidable. When you feel that you're under threat all the time, and when you feel that an enemy is one step behind you, you tend to put people in positions of power who you can trust. But these people do not necessarily, or aren't necessarily, the best people for this job. And these people often historically become super corrupt because they know that this relationship is built on them maintaining the system rather than on them making good decisions when it comes to economy, society, politics, policies, so on and so forth. So this is there on one hand, and on the other hand, obviously there's the Western media, which is portraying, and the Western influence and the Western powers, and your America and Israel and the UK, obviously, which has a historical relationship with Iran. They usually collapse these complexities, and they give you the soundbite of people versus regime, which serves a foreign policy agenda more than it reflects realities on the ground, and more than it's not even intended to serve the people on the ground, right? They claim that they are pro democracy, anti dictatorship, and they want to install a shah, a king, a monarch. So it's a bit absurd. So yeah, I mean, what I can say is that Iran is not a dictatorship frozen in time, as if a static kind of dictatorship. Iran is a society with internal political factions, with class tensions, real class tensions, with a lot of ethnic and regional differences and tensions. So I mean, yeah, these protests do not exist in a vacuum. People have every right to demand for change, but at the same time, these demands are always a fertile ground for foreign intervention in Iran.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you mentioned about foreign intervention, and what do you think is going to happen in the US context? They bombed Iran last year. Israel and US would be very happy to see a regime change. Do you think this is now more likely because of the protests?
So I'm gonna go over two things, two historical things that have happened in Iran that can kind of like answer this question, or just point us towards more clarity, basically. The most important one is obviously in 1953, there was President Mohammad Mossadegh who actually unionized the oil in Iran. He was a socialist. He was very popular in Iran, and he unionized the Anglo-Iranian oil company. And he was so popular that actually the mass protests were the reason why the Shah fled Iran, very briefly, but he did flee Iran in 1953, only to be reinstalled rapidly by a coup that was orchestrated by the CIA and MI6, and this is not a hidden secret anymore. So when we talk about Western interference and Iranian politics, modern Iranian politics, it is very much shaped by this phenomenon, and the Shah's dictatorship from 1953 and 1979 itself was violently repressive and fully backed by the West. So the Iranian people do understand that, and obviously the Iranian system and government that took power after the revolution in 1979, did a great job in showing everyone how the Shah was like, and all their legitimacy comes from the fact that the Shah is completely corrupt, completely pro-West, anti people, pro himself and the West. So yeah, the Islamic Revolution was not. It is called an Islamic Revolution, but in its core, in its essence, in its discourse, was not Islamic. It was anti-imperial. It was anti-monarchy, anti-foreign intervention. So this is one thing that's always on the minds of the Iranian people when it comes to foreign intervention. Countries like your Americas, your Britain, your Israel, obviously recently, which brings us to the second historical thing that has happened very recently, which is the 12-day war, where mass protests and unrest inside Iran was used. They also bombed. They bombed the prison, tried to release the prisoners in a kind of like an attempt to fuel this unrest. But what happened then is, as opposed to us, I come from Lebanon, a region that was shaped by Sykes-Picot and the Balfour Declaration and so on and so forth. The people living there are very fragmented and they are very isolated, and the national pride kind of is not really there. It doesn't kind of exist. We were being bombed by Israel, and you had people who are kind of like they don't mind the Israeli bombs in a sense if it meant getting rid of Hezbollah. You had other people who had more pride, I can say, who were against anyone that bombs us. But see, the society was kind of fragmented into two. In Iran, colonization was different. In Iran, it was more, they installed the puppet Shah, and it was a very severe and aggressive economical colonization, siphoning all the resources and impoverishing the people and so on. So Iran itself was not fragmented. What we saw in the 12-day war, I think, was a manifestation of this. We saw national pride, people who will not give in or surrender or agree or clap for an enemy that is bombing and killing fellow citizens. So I think what's happening today is a lesson learned, in a sense, from that 12-day war, which is, if you want to topple the regime by the people themselves, you can't be bombing the people. You have to try to pretend that you are their friend, in a sense. All of a sudden, they're loving Iranians right now in the West. But yeah, I mean, your imperial forces are not hiding the fact that they are heavily involved in this. Pompeo tweet that, like something like say hi to the Mossad agents next to you when you're protesting, something absurd like that. Also, obviously in Israel, they do not hide the fact that they actually tweet before protests. Oh, today, look at what's going to happen today, and all of a sudden, that's what happened last night. You saw protesters shooting, fires everywhere. Complete and utter kind of like chaos. That kind of like all hell has broken loose. That kind of narrative in Iran. Now, I think that the Iranian government knows how to deal with this. They know how to deal with protests. They've been seasoned in kind of like fragmenting the opposition, and as they do here in Britain, they kind of like try to divide and conquer the opposition. So to speak. They're used to this in Iran. But I think what they are failing to do very serious. This is something that's very serious and severe, is that they are failing to fix the issue that is being used by the Western powers and by Israel to fuel this unrest. They're failing to see to these economical reforms. I don't know what you can call it, whatever you want, but basically fixing the issues that create these instabilities. People, especially the businessmen in Iran, they don't want instability. They want to trade. They want to sell things and buy things, and they hate when they buy a product and they can't sell it the next day because of the fluctuation of prices and the currency devaluation. So I feel I feel this is basically the dance that's happening right now. This is kind of like this performance on the street that's happening right now, and this tension. One from the Iranian government, who knows that people have the every right to say that they are displeased and that they want change on one hand, but on the other hand, you got Pompeo telling the Iranian and Trump telling them, "Oh, if you kill a protester, we will invade." I mean, both are kind of living at the same in the space, and it's up to the Iranian government to show us what it's going to do next. And obviously, it's up to the West to react to that. Now, are we going to see a military intervention during or after this unrest? I feel it's highly likely. I feel if these unrests do not topple the system, maybe Israel and the US and the old imperial forces, the old colonial forces. Israel is obviously a base, a forward base for that historical colonial powers. They will try their best to keep this instability. They will try their best to, if they have a chance, if they have an opening to interfere militarily or just by your money and whatnot. Elon Musk, yesterday I read a report that he opened when the government, or I don't know how the internet fell in Iran, Elon Musk opened up his Starlink capacity over Iran, kind of like to show that he's giving the people of Iran internet when the government has rid them from it. But I mean, obviously this is more for show than it is reality, because you need satellite dishes, you need like proper infrastructure to get connected to Starlink. It's not just like you put the Wi-Fi password on your computer or your phone. So yes, I think we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how this unfolds, but it's very, very, very serious.
That was writer Jamal Awar. I know some people are saying that YouTube has been a bit stuttery. Of course, we use online software, so there's nothing we can do on our end, but we will try and fix those tech issues. Let's go to our comments and let's bring in Banseka's to the right, to the far right, dare I say. We've got Sarah as producer as well.
Hello, everyone.
How are we, Sarah?
Yes, great, thank you. Really good to be here as per. I hope everyone's had a really great week. It's been such a great show. Let's go to our Rachel, who is always donating, said TL turn left broadcasting from Polymarket UK studio in 2027.
I think that was a dig at the Young Turks. They
Yeah.
started taking poly. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're gonna be the Young Turks ourselves, and we're gonna get loads of money and invest in Polymarket, or the Polymarket invest in them.
Yeah, watch this
no,
space.
don't think that's gonna happen.
No, I'm
We'd like a
joking.
studio though. We would like that, but not Polymarket.
No, true. But I just wanted to say, I wanted to put this comment up from Michael. Thank you, Michael. So Banseka can come back very easy to listen. Can come back very easy to listen to and speaking sense. Heart. And I
Agree.
absolutely agree.
Agree with you, Michael.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Adam made me laugh with this one and said, do you think this was the first story? Do you think it was because the teacher saw the clip of Starmer doing the 6-7 meme? And I did laugh. So funny. He didn't stop as well. Like as I was watching, he just kept going.
I still don't know what that is. I
don't
every
really
time
know.
And be like, I don't know what this is, and I'm not going to get involved.
It's literally just this kid at a basketball game that just screamed.
But I don't get the 6-7 reference though. Is it? Is he 6 foot? Is he 7 foot? And they go 6'7". I don't know. I'm a boomer now. We're boomers. I mean, you know, I'm 32. I think I am 32.
I don't think Keir Starmer is that media literate, is he? Like,
no.
Doing it must be pure
6'7".
Yeah, gotta be.
6'7".
You're too good at that. It's crazy. Sorry, Michael. I've just picked on you about 3 times. He said, "Newsflash: you can be Muslim and English," and it's such a wild concept. And then this is to Tommy's tweet. Tommy, what street are you getting a flight back over? And it's true. I don't actually know where is Tommy's whereabouts at the moment. Where's Stephen's whereabouts? I don't know.
Probably Tel Aviv.
Yeah, facts.
Thanks for that.
And then Specs said, technical bugs creating CSM is not a technical bug, and it's true. I don't like the excuses that are made, and I do find it's so ironic that they will chime so hard on we need to protect our streets, we need to protect our women and girls, but then make excuses
to protect our Elon Musk.
perpetrators. Yeah, we need to protect our billionaire. And then the one that only Rob said, Rupert Lowe donates his MP salary to charity, so swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, but do you know what? I want to respond to that one. Really do. Banseka, you could definitely come in as well, but I just want to say, once upon a time, you didn't get a wage as an MP, and they introduced wages for MPs so working class people could participate in the political system, because before it was only rich people in Parliament because they could afford not to take a wage. So Rupert Lowe donating his salary to charity means fuck all when 1, he's already extremely wealthy, and 2, he's making an MP's wage just by tweeting bullshit. So I absolutely have no respect for that. It is complete virtue signaling when he gives away his wage. Yes, he can afford to do that because he's really, really rich. I would actually support increasing the MP's wage because I want more working class people in Parliament without having to look to, you know, exterior kinds of funding, which is where we get lobbying when it comes easy. So it doesn't swing and roundabout. Sorry, Rob. It's a load of crap.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about incentives, isn't it? Right? Because if you're foregoing the money that the state gives you to do your job, i.e. to represent your constituents, to be a backbench MP, but you're getting other money from tweeting crazy crap, your incentives are quite skewed. And so I totally agree. I would much rather, like I said, I don't mind if their salary increases a bit in line with other working people as well, hopefully getting high wages too. I don't mind if MPs are paid well. I think that's a good thing. But I don't want them having loads of other jobs doing other things, because then you start doing the bidding of other shady outfits, other organisations, other private individuals, and you're no longer doing the bidding of the people, which is what you've been elected to do. So there's definitely a problem.
I mean, he's come back and he said, so you can't live on 90k. First of all, yes, and I'm not saying you can't live on 90k. Unfortunately, MPs are greedy and they feel like they need to have more money than 90k because they can get hundreds of thousands of pounds from health insurance companies such as West Streeting. And also it says Jeremy Corbyn does the exact same. I actually don't know if he gives up all of his wage, but it also matters to where it goes. So I believe Nadia Whittam, I don't know if she still does it, she gives half a wage away, but that's in solid, just like Andrea Egan as well, as Unison leader, she gets a shitload of money for being union leader, far too high if you ask me, and she gives most of it away, and she's on a social worker's wage. But that's in solidarity with other workers. But Rupert Lowe, who doesn't need the wage, who takes money from Twitter just with bullshit opinions, and he's rich anyway. I'm not saying we need to celebrate it. I don't think that Jeremy Corbyn giving all his money away means, oh, good for Jeremy Corbyn. What matters is your policies and what you support.
Yeah, absolutely. Really well said. Spot on. I don't know if you want to respond to another comment that's been made by the same person, but Jeremy spent more time discussing foreign affairs and siding with terrorists than addressing his constituents. Let me know the difference, please.
I mean, I mean, you're obviously a fucking troll then if you're saying that.
But then they said, I don't like Rupert.
I mean, to be fair though, look, everyone, no one only speaks about politics in this country. Every single politician or person in the media speaks about foreign affairs. Now, I would rather a politician who speaks up in defense of Palestinians against a genocide than someone like Tommy Robinson who bends the knee for Israel and US tech giants. You'll never find, even like Rupert Lowe says, I only care about this country. He will say stuff about foreign politics. So there's nothing wrong with talking about foreign politics. It just matters what you're talking about.
Also, I want to say one thing. I don't know where this story comes that Jeremy Corbyn is a bad constituency MP. Jeremy Corbyn is a very thorough local constituency MP. I've sat with Jeremy Corbyn when he's held people forums in Islington, for example, where we spent the whole time, 3 hours of his constituents talking about housing. It's a very local, extremely local to Islington issue, for example. So this was something that the Labour Party used to say as well. Like, oh, that would serve out Jeremy Corbyn. God, he's not even a good MP. He's not even a good constituency MP. Yes, he is. Very famously, that was all he was known for the longest time before he became Labour leader, was that he was a good constituency MP. And Conservative MPs used to say, oh, don't like the bloke's politics, but he's quite a good MP to his local constituents. That's what they used to say. So, you don't have to like the guy's politics. That's totally fine.
You're right. A lot of detractors, apart from those inside the Labour Party because they're so spiteful, a lot of Conservative MPs would say, look, he's a very active local MP. And I tell you what, if you can mount an independent campaign against a Labour brand with only 6 weeks of the campaign in the last general election, because he announced on the first day of the general election that he's running as an independent, and many people, and we did Vox Pops, we went to Islington North, we spoke to so many people who thought that Jeremy Corbyn was still a member of the Labour Party. They said, I'm voting for Jeremy. And it's like, he's an independent. They're like, oh, really? That, and he still managed to win decisively. He can't be a bad MP and never turns up and addresses issues with his constituents if he did that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Andrina responded to the comment about swings and roundabouts and said Rupert's opening a bar and it's called the Low Bar. That's
I think I hearted that.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
I think I hearted that one. That's like such a dad joke, but I was like,
it's so good. Yeah. But then we had Emo said, shut down Twitter, stop people exposing the truth, control the narrative. And then they also said, sorry, I do pick on people. Ban Twitter instead of going after the people making the image. Great logic.
Well, it is good logic because I saw someone else in defense of Musk. This account that said, Grok is like a pen, right? Anyone can pick up a pen and draw whatever they want. It's the user, not the tool. Well, first of all, AI is far more complex than a bloody pen. But also, your logic would be like, let's never have any laws. Oh, we've lost Banseka. Should be back. By your logic, that means we shouldn't have any laws because we should just trust people to do the right thing. So if you commit a crime, well, that's bad on that person. We don't need laws to deal with it. No, we should. If you have a social media platform with a AI tool, right, that allows it to be made, you cannot say that person who controls it is absolved of anything. That's ridiculous. Otherwise, by your logic, porn websites should have underage children on there. And then you say, well, we'll just blame the people that upload child porn. No, you'd also blame the website that fucking hosts it. So even though you spelt great wrong, by the way, and I'm not a fucking, grammar Nazi, but come on, man. Your logic means nothing. It's complete BS. And it's not picking on you, by the way. It's just responding to your comment. You could be a lovely person.
No,
I'm not.
I look at my favorites. Emo's my favorite today, just like Michael's my favorite at the beginning. Now Emo's my favorite.
Okay.
I do just tend to take the same comments from the same person, not even intentionally. But I do think Emo's a troll. But I do want to put troll comments up, and I'm keen to do that because there are people who don't troll and genuinely say those things that are being said, and I think it's important to unpack those things as much as possible, and not always because I know we all agree, we're all on the same page, and most of the community are on the same page, but there is the odd person that,
and we're not an echo chamber though, because I think we're quite good like that. We make sure actually if there's some comments that we disagree with, we'll get them up.
Yeah, exactly. And then System Vid said, for fact's sake, I'm banned on Twitter, but abusive images are fine. And actually, this is quite interesting. I haven't had Twitter for years, by the way. I don't have X. Sorry, you get so annoyed when I call it X. I don't have Twitter, but because my blood pressure was always so high, like my watch would always say your stress levels are like increasing, and because I'd go on there, and I'd get off, and I'd go off, and I'd come back on, like all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I remember my dad being banned on Twitter, suspended and whatever, and he can't tweet anything. And I was like, why? And he's like, I actually don't know. I think it's because he kept criticizing politicians. And I don't know if that's the case though, because lots of people still use Twitter and criticize politicians all the time. But I don't know what was going on there. But anyway, it is what it is. And last comment from Emo. They are independent countries. They have a choice, and they're choosing to keep the borders as they are. They blame all the problems on the West. And I wasn't quite sure what this was in relation to. And I don't know why I actually started. I started for a reason, but I don't know.
I don't know what he's sort of referencing there.
But that's it for the comments. Excellent show.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
No, thank you.
Wonderful show.
I will go now. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now, of course, that is all we have time for. I want to thank all of our viewers who tuned in. Of course, thank you, Banseka, for joining me tonight. You were wonderful. We definitely want you back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a blast.
Now, remember, please to like this stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to a Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.